The first thing Lily did when she arrived on station Meridian was press her nose against the observation glass and fog it up with her breath. She was 7 years old, small for her age, and completely unbothered by the fact that the station was home to 43 alien species, 6 active diplomatic crises, and a ventilation system that smelled like burnt metal and something faintly alive. To Lily, it smelled like adventure. She had told her father this on the shuttle ride over. He had rubbed his eyes and said, "Please don't touch anything." Her father was Ambassador David Osei. He was a tall, careful man who chose his words the way other people chose expensive furniture, slowly, and with an eye toward how they would look later. He had spent 11 years working toward this moment, Earth's formal entry into the galactic Concord. Today was the first day of review proceedings. He had prepared for it for longer than Lily had been alive. He had not prepared for the fact that the station's clearance system would assign his daughter an unrestricted diplomatic family badge instead of the standard supervised minor tag. The mistake had been made 3 levels up in the bureaucratic chain and would not be discovered for another 6 hours. By then, it would not matter. Station Meridian was a massive wheel of steel and light, spinning slow at the edge of neutral space. It was where species that did not fully trust each other came to pretend they did. The corridors were wide and color-coded by species tolerance zones. Most of the alien children on the station were kept in designated family quarters. They moved with escorts in groups behind barriers. Lily moved alone because no one had told her not to. She had slipped away from the diplomatic waiting area while her father was in a pre-session briefing. She had left a note on his chair that said, "Exploring back soon," and had drawn a small rocket next to her name, which she felt was informative enough. The main corridors were full of aliens going places quickly and looking at screens. Lily watched them all. There was a species that looked like walking coral reefs, their bodies branching in slow, colorful pulses. There was a group of tall, thin beings with 4 arms each, speaking in a language that sounded like someone tuning a radio. There was a squat, gray-skinned officer type standing near a door, holding a data tablet and frowning at it with what appeared to be 3 separate mouths. Lily waved at him. He stared at her. She moved on. She had her biscuit tin with her. It was a round metal container, slightly dented, painted with faded blue flowers. It had been her grandmother's. Lily filled it with butter biscuits before every trip because, as she had explained to her father many times, you never knew when you would need a biscuit. Her father had never been able to argue with this logic, mostly because it was correct. She followed the main corridor until it branched, then took the smaller branch because it was less crowded and the lights were a warmer color. She passed a cluster of Enharan workers, insectoid beings with long, elegant antennae who paused their conversation to observe her. One of them tilted its head at an angle that seemed curious rather than hostile. Lily smiled at it and kept walking. The corridor narrowed. The floor changed from polished composite to something older and slightly ridged. A sign on the wall displayed text in several languages. Lily could not read most of them, but the human translation at the bottom said, "Maintenance and Biological Transit, Authorized Personnel." Her badge beeped softly as she passed under the scanner. The door opened. She went through. It was quieter on the other side. Dimmer too, the air was warmer, with a faint hum coming from somewhere below the floor. Heat lamps were mounted along the upper walls at intervals, casting orange light in soft pools. The corridor opened into a wider chamber, some kind of holding area, lined with transit pods in various sizes, most of them empty and dark. Lily stopped. She heard something. It was a small sound, raspy, irregular, like something trying very hard to breathe quietly and not quite managing it. It came from the far corner of the chamber, where one of the larger transit pods sat at an angle, its side panel cracked open, the light inside it broken. Lily walked toward it, not fast, not slow, the way she walked toward dogs she didn't know yet. She stopped about 2 meters away and looked. In the shadow behind the cracked pod, curled as small as it could make itself, was a creature she had never seen before. It was roughly the size of a large dog. Its scales were dark silver, almost black in the low light, but they caught the heat lamp glow in a way that made them shimmer faintly. It had wings folded tight against its body, though one of them was not folded right. It was bent wrong at the joint, the membrane catching the light in a way that told Lily clearly that it hurt. Its eyes were open. They were the color of molten copper, bright and wide, and they were fixed on her. It did not move. Lily did not move either. She looked at it for a long moment. It was shaking slightly, though whether from pain or cold or fear she couldn't tell. It made the raspy sound again, softer this time, like it was trying to make itself quieter. Lily sat down on the floor, cross-legged. She set her biscuit tin in her lap. "Hi," she said. The creature stared at her. "You look like you're having a bad day," Lily said. "I have biscuits." In the corner of the chamber, mounted high on the wall, a small security camera, listed as non-functional in the station's maintenance log for the past 3 months, flickered once. Then its red indicator light came on, very quietly, and stayed on. The creature did not move toward her. It did not move away either. It just watched, the way very frightened things watch when they are too tired to run. Lily opened her biscuit tin slowly so the lid didn't make a sudden noise. She took one biscuit out, a plain butter one, slightly golden at the edges, and set it on the floor between them. Then she put the lid back on and waited. The chamber was warm and quiet. Somewhere below the floor, the hum continued its low, steady rhythm. The heat lamps glowed orange. The creature's copper eyes moved from Lily's face to the biscuit, then back to Lily's face. She did not lean forward. She did not make any sudden moves. She had learned this from a summer spent near her grandmother's farm, where a stray dog had lived under the porch for 2 weeks before it finally let anyone close. You had to give things time. You had to let them decide. The creature's breathing was still ragged. Its folded wing, the wrong one, the hurt one, shifted slightly when it breathed, and each time it did, Lily could see the way the joint caught wrong and the membrane pulled at an angle it wasn't supposed to. It must have hurt quite a lot. It was being very quiet about it. "That wing looks like it really hurts," Lily said, in a conversational tone. "I fell off a wall once and broke my arm. I cried for a really long time. You're doing much better than I did." The creature made a sound, low, not quite a growl, not quite anything Lily had a word for, but it didn't feel like a threat. It felt like an acknowledgement. Minutes passed. Lily was not an impatient child. She had once sat next to a fish pond for an entire afternoon just to see if a frog would climb onto the same rock twice. It had. She had considered this a worthwhile use of time. Then the creature moved. It was slow, very slow. It uncurled just slightly from its tight position, extending its neck by a small amount and stretched forward until its nose was close to the biscuit. It sniffed, long and careful. It pulled back, sniffed again. Then it ate the biscuit. It was a very small and precise eating. It took the biscuit gently, like it understood that delicate things should be handled carefully. It chewed. It blinked its copper eyes slowly. Lily smiled. "Good, right." She opened the tin and got out another one. This time she didn't set it on the floor. She held it out in her palm. The creature looked at her hand, looked at her face. The silence stretched out, full and careful. Then, with a movement that was somehow both cautious and deliberate, it leaned forward and took the biscuit from her palm. Its mouth was very warm. It did not touch her hand with anything other than its lips, and it did it gently. Lily let out a breath she had not entirely known she was holding. "Okay," she said. "I'm Lily. I don't know what your name is. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." She moved forward then, slowly, a few inches at a time. The creature watched her. It did not pull back. When she was close enough, she could see the wing clearly. The membrane was torn near the upper joint. Not completely through, but badly enough. The edges ragged and dried with something dark. It had not been treated. It had probably been like this for a day or more. "That needs to be wrapped," Lily said. She thought for a moment. Then she reached up and pulled the ribbon from her hair. It was a plain white ribbon, not very long, but it was soft and clean. She held it up so the creature could see it. "I'm going to fix it," she said. "Is that okay?" The creature watched her. She took that as a yes, which was perhaps optimistic, But optimism had served Lily well in most situations. She moved very carefully. She did not touch the torn part of the wing, just the area around the joint, looping the ribbon gently around it, not too tight, creating a kind of soft support the way she had seen done once with a bird her neighbor had found. The creature was absolutely still while she did this, not frozen with fear, still in a different way, like something paying very close attention. When she was done, she sat back. The ribbon was tied off in a small bow, a little crooked. "There," she said. She looked at the creature's face. It was looking at the ribbon. Its copper eyes moved over it slowly, like it was trying to understand what had just happened. Then it looked at Lily. Lily leaned forward and kissed it on the top of its nose. It was a quick kiss, the kind children give without thinking very hard about it, the kind that means simply, "You are okay, I am here, this is fine." The creature froze. Every part of it went completely, perfectly still. Not the stillness of fear, not the stillness of aggression, a different kind of stillness entirely, the kind that happens when something occurs that has no category, no precedent, no slot in any existing memory to fall into. The creature had no framework for what had just happened to it. In its short life, every non-Vrethi being it had encountered had either shown fear or deference. Some had run, some had bowed. None had ever done this. Lily patted it once on the top of the head, very lightly, then sat back and opened her biscuit tin again. "You can have another one," she said. "I have loads." High on the wall, the security camera's red light continued to glow. In the station's security hub, 3 levels up, a junior technician looked up from his screen. He had just noticed the camera feed from Biological Transit Chamber 4, the one that had supposedly been offline for months, had come back on. He looked at what was on the screen. He looked at it for a long time. Then he picked up his communications device and called his supervisor. The supervisor's name was Rule. He was Gorathi, broad, reptilian, built like a piece of architecture, and he had been running Station Meridian for 9 years without a single incident serious enough to wake him from his scheduled rest cycle. His record was, until this moment, something he was quietly proud of. He stared at the camera feed. On the screen, a small human girl was sitting cross-legged on the floor of Biological Transit Chamber 4, sharing biscuits with a dark silver infant Vrethi, who was currently resting its chin on her knee while she scratched very gently behind its ear ridge. "Get me the Vrethi escort manifest," Rule said very quietly. His aide pulled it up. There was a long pause. "Their hatchling transport is listed as secured aboard their docking vessel," the aide said. "Is it?" said Rule. It was. There was a micro-rupture in the vessel's inner corridor during docking, a pressure issue, nothing catastrophic. The corridor was sealed for 6 hours while it was repaired. The escort team conducted a head count after repairs were completed and reported all clear. Rule looked at the screen again. The hatchling had shifted, tucking its nose more firmly against the human girl's side. She had put her arm around it without appearing to think about it, the way you put your arm around something that is sitting close to you and seems cold. "They counted wrong," Rule said. "Yes, sir." "How long has it been in that chamber?" Based on the last confirmed biosign from its escort team, approximately 41 hours. Rule closed his eyes for a brief moment. The Vrethi were a dragon species formerly known in Concord records as the Vrethi Dominion, though almost no one called them that. Everyone called them what they were, the oldest, most feared, most deliberately isolated species in the known galaxy. They had not attended a Concord session in 400 years. They had come now, only now, because the old flame, their ancient patriarch, had chosen to observe humanity's admission proceedings in person. This was considered, by every political analyst who had heard it, to be either a very good sign or the beginning of something no one would survive. The hatchling currently accepting ear scratches from a 7-year-old was not just any Vrethi infant. It was the youngest member of the old flame's direct bloodline. Its name was Scale. Under Vrethi tradition that had been in place for longer than most current civilizations, had existed physical contact with a Vrethi hatchling by any non-Vrethi being, without explicit ritual permission from the lineage elder, was considered an act of war. Not a diplomatic incident, not a violation, an act of war. Rule pulled up the Vrethi docking arm communications channel. He found the delegation leader, a warrior named Gret, broad and dark-scaled, who had spoken exactly 14 words during the entire boarding process, and told him what the camera showed. There was a silence on the other end of the channel that Rule would describe later in his official incident report as geologically significant. Then Gret said, "We are coming." Rule then called the human ambassador's briefing room. David Osai was escorted out of his seat mid-sentence and brought to the security hub at speed. When he saw the feed, the color left his face in a visible wave. "That's my daughter," he said. "Yes," said Rule. "Why is she?" Her clearance badge was set to unrestricted. There was a processing error. David stared at the screen. Lily had apparently run out of biscuits and was now showing the hatchling something in her biscuit tin, the inside of the lid, it looked like, which had a small painted scene of blue flowers on it. The hatchling was looking at it with an expression that David, even in his current state of controlled panic, could only describe as interested. "Is she in danger?" he said. Rule considered his answer for a moment longer than David would have liked. The hatchling has shown no aggressive behavior in 41 hours of containment and has demonstrated willingness to. "Is my daughter in danger?" "Not at this precise moment," Rule said. "However, the complication is not the hatchling. The complication is the delegation." He explained the tradition, briefly, professionally. David listened. His expression did not change, but his hands, which were resting on the edge of the console, went very still. "An act of war," he said. "Under Vrethi law, yes." "She kissed it on the nose." "She did." "She gave it biscuits and kissed it on the nose and fixed its wing with her hair ribbon." "That is an accurate summary." David breathed in once steadily and breathed out. He had spent 11 years in diplomacy. He had negotiated with species whose concept of time moved at a different rate than his own, species who communicated exclusively through scent, species who considered silence a form of aggression. He had never, in his entire career, been frightened in a way he could not think around. He was, right now, quite frightened. The door to the security hub opened. Gret walked in. He was taller than the doorframe required him to be, and he moved with the particular kind of stillness that belongs to things that have spent a long time being the most dangerous thing in any given room. He looked at the screen. On the feed, Lily had apparently decided the hatchling needed company more than it needed quiet. She was talking to it in a steady, gentle stream, not loudly, not performing, just talking. The hatchling's eyes, copper bright, were fixed on her face. Gret watched for a long moment. His expression gave away nothing. Then he said, "Open the door." No one moved. "The chamber door," Gret said. "Open it." Rule opened it. Gret walked to the containment ring alone. His escort waited outside. The door to biological transit chamber 4 slid open. Gret stepped inside. Lily looked up. She took in Gret, the height, the scales, the weapons at his side, the look of a being who had ended things before and was entirely comfortable with the concept, and tilted her head slightly. "Hello," she said. "Is he yours?" Gret said nothing. "His wing was hurt," Lily said. "I fixed it. I used my ribbon. I hope that's okay." She paused. "Do you have any more biscuits? I ran out." The grand chamber of Station Meridian had been built for exactly the kind of moment that made history uncomfortable. The ceiling was high. The seats were arranged in concentric arcs. Everything about the room communicated that what happened here mattered. It had never felt quite as heavy as it did right now. Every delegation on the station had been notified. Most of them were present or watching via relay feed. The Enharan senior counselor, Vora, sat at the head of the proceedings table. Her mandibles moved in a small, nervous rhythm she was not aware of. Beside her, two aides whispered things she already knew into her ear at intervals, which she found unhelpful. Ambassador David Osai sat at the human delegation table with his hands folded. Lily sat beside him in a chair that was slightly too large for her, and her feet did not reach the floor. She was holding her empty biscuit tin in her lap. She had been told, on the walk over, to please let the adults speak first. She had agreed to this with the easy agreement of a child who reserves the right to revise her position as circumstances develop. The Vrithai delegation was present at the far end of the chamber. Gret stood behind the delegation table rather than sitting at it. He had not spoken since he escorted Lily out of the transit chamber. He had walked beside her in silence, which was, Lily had observed, a lot calmer than she had expected. Scale had been returned to Vrithai medical care. He had been unwilling, in a quiet and persistent way, to stop looking at the door through which Lily had left. The Vrithai medic's report on this would describe it as atypical post-stress attachment behavior. The medic would spend several days being dissatisfied with this description. Vora opened the session. She spoke carefully, laying out the incident in procedural terms: navigational error, unsupervised minor, non-intentional contact, no aggressive behavior on either side. She used the word misunderstanding 4 times. She was very good at this, making things smaller than they were, shrinking them into the right-sized boxes where they could be managed, was her primary skill. She was halfway through her 3rd careful paragraph when the hollow projection system at the center of the chamber activated. No one had requested it. The projection resolved into the image of the old flame. He was enormous, even in projection, so large that the hollow frame had scaled him down, and he still filled the space above the chamber floor like a presence rather than an image. His scales were the color of deep coals, layered and ancient. His eyes were gold, not warm gold, but the dense, specific gold of something that had lasted a very long time. He had no title displayed beneath his image. He did not need one. Every species in the room knew who he was, and every species in the room had adjusted their posture without consciously deciding to. He did not address the council. He looked directly at Lily. "Human child," said the old flame. His voice came through the translation system as deep and measured. It was not loud, but it filled every part of the room anyway, the way very old sounds do. Lily looked back at him. She had, in her short life, encountered a number of very large and very serious things. She approached them all the same way. "Hello," she said. "You touched the hatchling," the old flame said. "Yes," Lily said. "His wing was hurt, and he was crying sort of quietly. I don't think he wanted anyone to hear." The old flame was still for a moment. "You knew what he was." "I didn't know his name," Lily said, "or what he was called, but he was small and hurt and alone, so I sat with him." "And you were not afraid?" Lily thought about this the way she thought about things she wanted to answer honestly. Her feet swung slightly beneath the chair. "A little," she said, "at first, but he was more scared than me, so it seemed like the wrong thing to worry about." The room was perfectly silent. Vora had stopped moving. Both her aides had stopped whispering. At the Vrithai table, Gret had gone very still in a way that was different from his usual stillness. The old flame said, "In 3,000 years, no being outside our kind has spoken those words about one of my blood." His voice held no particular emotion that the translation could name. Non-Vrithai encounter our young in one of 2 ways: they flee, or they calculate the threat and act accordingly. This is not a failure of courage, it is reason. Our young are dangerous, even newly hatched. Every species knows this. "He didn't feel dangerous," Lily said. "He felt hurt." "How did you know he would not harm you?" Lily considered this. "I didn't," she said. "Not for sure, but sometimes you have to go first. If you wait until you're sure it's safe, you might wait too long." The silence that followed that statement was a different quality than the silence before it. The first silence had been the silence of shock. This one was the silence of something landing. David Osai, beside his daughter, closed his eyes for a brief moment. He did not reach for her hand. He did not need to. He understood. with the particular clarity of a parent watching their child be themselves in public, that she had just said something more precisely true than anything he could have prepared. Every human watching the feed understood it. They had grown up with it without having a name for it. You go first. You extend the hand. You sit down next to the thing that frightens you, because if you don't, the distance only grows. Every alien in the room did not understand it. And that gap, that exact gap, between what the humans understood in their bones and what every other species found incomprehensible, was the most important thing that had happened in the Grand Chamber in 30 years. The old flame closed his eyes. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The human child is not to be held to account for the contact. The matter is closed." He paused. "She showed my blood that it was not alone. There is no Vrethi law that governs this, because this has not happened before." He closed the connection. The projection dissolved. No one spoke for a full 10 seconds. Then Vora turned to David Osai and said, quietly and with complete sincerity, "Your species is either the bravest thing in this galaxy or the most incomprehensibly reckless." David looked at his daughter, who was checking whether there were any biscuit crumbs left in the tin. "We've been asking ourselves that," he said, "for a very long time." The Vrethi requested a 48-hour recess from all Concord proceedings. No explanation was given. None was asked for. When the Vrethi requested something, the standard diplomatic approach was to agree quickly and look grateful. Vora granted the recess in under a minute and spent the next several hours trying to understand what, exactly, had just happened to her station. The first morning of the recess, Gret appeared outside the human family quarters. He stood in the corridor and waited. He did not knock. He seemed to regard knocking as a concept beneath comment. Eventually, David opened the door, saw Gret, and stood very carefully still for a moment. "The hatchling wants to know what the human child does," Gret said. "I have been asked to observe." David looked at him for a long moment. "Lily," he called. Lily appeared at his elbow, biscuit tin under her arm. She looked up at Gret. "Are you following me around today?" "Yes," said Gret. "Okay," said Lily, and walked past him into the corridor. "Come on then." What followed was 2 hours that Gret would later document in a formal report to the Old Flame, written in precise military language that somehow failed to capture any of it accurately. Lily went to the commissary first, because she wanted to see if any of the alien food dispensers would accept her station credits. 3 of them did. She bought something orange and gelatinous from a Sorathi machine, sniffed it, decided against it, and left it on the tray for anyone who wanted it. A passing Enharan worker took it. Lily told him his antennae were very nice. He stopped walking entirely and stood very still for a moment before managing a small, uncertain bow. Gret noted this in his report as, "The human child initiated positive contact with a station worker. The worker appeared confused but not displeased." At the station's main observation lounge, Lily pressed her nose to the glass again and watched the stars. Gret stood behind her. After a while, she turned and asked him if his people had a favorite star. He told her they navigated by the Vrethi Spine, a cluster of 7 stars that formed a line across the northern quadrant. She asked which one was his favorite. He said he did not have a favorite star. She told him that was a shame and turned back to the window. In the middle-level corridor, the busy one, where 6 species transit paths intersected at a junction that was always slightly chaotic, Lily taught Gret a hand-clapping game. She had to modify it because his hands were 3 times the size of hers and had claws, but she was adaptable, and after 4 attempts they landed on a version where she clapped, and he tapped 2 fingers together in response. He did this with the focus of someone diffusing something sensitive. 2 Gorathi officers passed them during this and stopped walking to stare. Gret did not acknowledge them. Lily waved. The Sorathi delegate appeared near the junction. The Sorathi were a species known, in every Concord record, for never initiating contact with other beings. They communicated when communicated to and otherwise moved through the galaxy like quiet water around obstacles. This one had been watching Lily, Gret noted, for approximately 20 minutes from various distances. The delegate finally stopped near them and extended one of its limbs, narrow, slightly translucent, ending in 4 branching fingers at approximately Lily's height. Lily shook it, cheerfully, firmly, the way her father had taught her. "Hi," she said, "I'm Lily." The Sorathi delegate made a sound that the station's translation system rendered as acknowledged, and then walked away at a pace that suggested it needed to go somewhere very quiet and think. Gret filed 17 lines of his report trying to explain this exchange. He gave up and wrote, "The Sorathi delegate initiated contact. This has not been recorded in Concord archives." That evening, Vora met privately with David Osei in a small conference room off the main diplomatic corridor. She brought tea, which she did not drink herself, but understood humans often wanted. "We have studied your species for a long time," Vora said. "Our behavioral models are extensive. We identified your aggression, your adaptability, your unusual pain tolerance, your cooperative instincts under stress." She paused. "We did not identify this." "This," David said. "The reflexive extension of warmth toward potential threats," Vora said. "It is not in the models. We have no category for it. Every species we have encountered responds to a threat source with one of 2 fundamental drives: remove it or move away from it. She stopped. Your daughter saw an injured creature that could have killed her and sat down next to it." "Yes," David said. "Why?" David turned his teacup slowly. He thought about how to say it correctly and then decided the correct way was the simple way. "We have always lived with things that could kill us," he said. "From the very beginning, large animals, bad weather, each other sometimes, we learned a very long time ago that running is not always the answer. Sometimes the thing that wants to harm you and the thing that needs help are the same creature. And if you can tell the difference, if you can look at something frightening and see that it is frightened too, then maybe you sit down. Maybe you offer what you have." Vora was quiet. "Lily didn't think about any of that," David continued. "She doesn't think about it in those terms at all. She just saw something hurt and alone and did what felt right. That's the thing. For us, for a lot of us, it doesn't feel like bravery. It just feels like what you do." Vora looked at him for a long time. "That," she said carefully, "is perhaps the most unsettling thing anyone has ever said to me." Meanwhile, in the Vrithai medical bay, Scale was being cooperative with his treatment for the first time since his escorts had found him. He was letting the medic work on his wing without pulling away. He was calm, quiet. But every few minutes, his copper eyes moved to the door. He was looking for something, not his escort, not his caretakers. The medic noted this in his log and underlined it twice, because he had no explanation for it, and it seemed like the kind of thing that should be remembered. The message arrived on the second morning of the recess. It came through the Vrithai docking channel, addressed not to the Concord, but to the human delegation directly. Vora received a copy, as was protocol, and read it 3 times before calling her aide. It was from the old flame. The Vrithai, it said, would not merely observe Earth's admission to the Galactic Concord. They would formally second it, acting as co-sponsor alongside the existing sponsor delegation. This had not happened before. In the entire history of the Concord, the Vrithai had never sponsored a species, never seconded a motion, never participated in the proceedings of any other civilization's induction. Vora had checked, twice. The records were clear. The message contained one additional line, directed to the human delegation. "Send the small one our regards." Vora set down the document and looked out her office window at the stars for a long time. The induction ceremony was held on the morning of the 3rd day. The grand chamber was full, more full than it had been in years. In fact, several delegations that had originally planned to observe via remote feed had quietly requested in-person seats. No one said why. No one needed to. David Osei spoke. His speech was short, careful, and genuinely good. He spoke about the long distance humanity had traveled, not just in space, but in understanding. He spoke about arriving somewhere new and not knowing the rules yet, and about how, sometimes, not knowing the rules meant you did the right thing by accident. He did not look at Lily when he said this, but several people in the room did. Lily sat beside him and swung her feet. She was wearing her good shoes, which she disliked because they pinched. She had her biscuit tin with her. She had refilled it from the commissary that morning. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the corridor outside the grand chamber. It was the kind of diplomatic event that usually involved a great deal of standing near food and saying careful things to people you needed to impress. It proceeded this way for about 15 minutes. Then the Gorathi station commander, Rule, appeared at Lily's side, holding a small wrapped package in his broad grey hands. He held it out to her without preamble. She opened it. Inside was a food item she did not recognize, dark and dense, with a smell that was sharp and a little sweet. Rule told her stiffly that it was a common travel food from the Gorathi homeworld. Children liked it, usually. Lily tried it. She chewed thoughtfully. "It's good," she said. "Thank you." Rule nodded once, turned, and walked back to his post with the demeanor of someone who had completed an important task. Vora approached next. She did not bring food. She simply bowed, a full Enharan bow, the kind used between equals of senior rank, the kind that was absolutely not appropriate for the context, and that she performed anyway deliberately while looking Lily in the eye. "For the station's records," Vora said, "you are listed as having committed no violation. The badge error has been corrected. Your clearance has been updated." She paused. "You are also informally the only non-Vrethi being in current Concord membership who has touched a Vrethi hatchling and been specifically thanked for it by the lineage elder. This is not a category we have a record system for. We are creating one." Lily thought about this. "Am I in trouble?" "No," said Vora. "Then okay," said Lily, and offered her a biscuit. Vora, to her own considerable surprise, took it. The Sorathi delegate appeared at the edge of the reception area. It stood there, and Lily saw it, and they looked at each other across the room. Lily raised her hand. The delegate raised two of its translucent fingers in response, and then moved quietly back into the crowd. The security team registered a fast-moving bio-sign from the Vrethi Medical Bay a moment before it mattered. Scale came through the reception doorway at a speed that was not quite a run, but was definitely not a walk. He was cleared by the medics, Wing wrapped in proper Vrethi medical dressing, and escorted by Gret, who was following at the particular pace of someone who has decided not to physically stop a thing from happening, but wants it on the record that he considered it. Scale crossed the room and put his head against Lily's shoulder. Not gently, exactly, with weight, the way you lean against something you trust to still be there. Every security officer in the room took a step forward and then stopped, because nothing about what was happening looked like a threat, and their training had no instruction for what it actually looked like instead. Lily put her arm around him. "Hi," she said, "how's your wing?" He made a sound, low and warm, and not quite anything the translation system could name. Gret stood nearby and filed nothing in his report about this moment. Some things resisted the format. Later, people would write papers about the Meridian incident. They would use terms like cross-species empathy threshold and unprecedented diplomatic precedent. They would analyze human behavioral patterns and compare them to 300 years of first contact data and try to find where the models had gone wrong. The most widely read paper, published 2 years later, would argue that humans had been shaped by a long history of living beside things that could kill them, that their nervous systems had learned very early that the right response to danger was not always distance, that sometimes it was presence. It was a good paper, it was mostly correct. But it did not capture the biscuit tin, or the hair ribbon, or the particular way Lily had sat down on a cold floor in a dark room and said hi to something that frightened her, because it seemed more frightened than she was, and someone had to go first. 3 years later, a package arrived at the Osai home on Earth. Diplomatic seal, Vrethi markings, no return address needed. Inside was a single dark scale, silver-black, iridescent in the right light, warm to the touch for reasons that had nothing to do with the sun. There was a card with it, no words, just a small drawing scratched carefully into the surface with what must have been a claw tip pressed with unusual gentleness into the material, a small figure, cross-legged on a floor, holding out something small and round. Across from it, a creature with wings leaning forward. Lily set it on her windowsill, where the light hit it right. She did not need to be told who had sent it. She did not need to be told what it meant. Some things don't require translation. They just require someone willing to sit down first.